Hey, what's going on, good people? It's your boy James Harris, of course, Mental Heal. Listen, I appreciate all the support over the years, whether it was for my book, man, Just Express Yourself, which is an interactive planning guide for boys and men to better express themselves. So salute to those parents who got it for their young sons. Praises to those partners and couples who got it for the men in their life. Of course, to the schools, the administrative, and everybody else who ordering the book by the dozens. I definitely appreciate that. And also salute to everybody who supported me on Cheesy Date Board Games, which is a good game for adults and couples, your game night, your date nights. So many interactive ideas come from it. I definitely love the responses that it's garnering. But now I'm asking for your support again on this YouTube journey. I'm back. I took a little break because I had so much going on, but be a little bit more consistent with it. I got a couple of interviews lined up with prominent people and people doing phenomenal things within the community or within this mental health space or even different authors and things like that. So bear with me. Appreciate your support. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And the guest that I got coming up now is.
How you doing, Dr. Vic Herbin III? I'm an author of Organizational Arrogance. That's released a book called Organizational Arrogance. It's really about the how superiority behaviors or leadership superiority behaviors can impact a culture and become rampant. And I'm also the CEO and the founder of Limited Time Unlimited Impact LLC. That's a leadership development firm focusing on organizational arrogance solutions and leadership transformations.
Okay, I got you. So when we talk about just leadership in general, a lot of people throw out that term leadership in so many things, but what's your professional journey to, I guess, convince or to allow one that insight to know your professional journey of leadership?
Yeah. I think it's a great question. My leadership journey started in the United States Army. That's where my journey started. I joined the Army as a young lieutenant, originally branched as Air Defense Artillery. And so within that 20 plus year career, I had the opportunity to serve at a variety of levels at strategic, operational, and tactical level. 3 tours to support Operation Iraqi Freedom. I was deployed '03 to '04, 2005 to 6, and 9 to 10. And while serving my country was the greatest thing ever, the leadership lesson I got from that experience was you could be a team leader, you could be the senior member of an organization, but you're still a team member. And I realized that wisdom is in the room. I saw a general officer, our first tour Iraq, and he was really puzzled by the IED threat that was coming. And there was no answers on how we could protect the Humvees and protect the soldiers. And there was a private or specialist inside the room, and he raises his hand. The general calls on him. All the brass in there, the colonels, the generals, the majors. None of us had ideas or uh, even any type of way to even combat this issue. And the soldier said, "Hey, sir, if you don't mind, permission to speak." And he shared what they could use sheet metal from the motor pool. And maybe we can use that as some level of insulation at the bottom of the Humvees, and maybe that'll help. And the general said, "You know what, let's try it." And so what I learned there as a young captain was, wow, you didn't have to be the most senior ranking person to have the great ideas to contribute. Wisdom's in the room. So how do you leverage the expertise of people around the table? And so I saw there as a leader being able to humble himself and say, listen, I don't know. And it's okay to say I don't know, but you have a team around you of experts and you leverage those people. And so that's something I learned as one of the first leadership lessons I learned. And then had the opportunity to work at the Pentagon at about my 13th year in the military, 13th, 14th year. And I just finished those 3 deployments. And so I was battle hardened, but because during that time I had already served mainly at that tactical level, leading the troops in combat, planning organization to go to combat, so at the operational level, but never at the strategic level. And I found myself a little bit like a fish out of water because for all the other places I was normally the big fish in the small pond. Here it is, I am a very small fish in the large pond. And one of the things I had to encounter was working with civilians. And I had never been around civilians. I normally, there may be one or two, and they work at certain places on the installation, But here it was, I was the minority as far as a military member. And I was the general's aide and I was an executive officer. And I remember going into the food court, and my general was in the food court. And I come up to him. I mean, I'm tabbed out, and I say, "Sir," he said, "Yeah, Vic." I said, "How do you work in this environment?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, with all these civilians?" And he said, "Stop right there. I don't care if they have a suit and tie or a camouflage uniform. Leadership is universal. Everyone's entitled to great leadership. We don't do that." And so, what a professional butt chewing that was, but also probably the biggest leadership lesson I got, where there is no Army leadership or Navy leadership, civilian leadership. Leadership truly is universal. How do you motivate? How do you influence? How do you set vision? How do you have a mission that everyone is set for the same goal for accomplishment? And so, adding that with the Iraq experience, understanding that at the end of the day, we have one common goal, whether we're in combat, to get home safely. How can us as a team get home safely? Working at the Pentagon, how of us as a team can get a mission accomplished? Leadership truly is universal. And within that assignment, I worked with political appointees, SESs, senior civilian leaders, and those same civilian leaders that had I stuck in that myopic view were the same ones that recommended me for an opportunity to work at the White House Communications Agency. And so then having an opportunity to work at the White House Communications Agency as a director of personnel in this assignment, now I have not only civilians I'm working with interagency, State Department, the United States Secret Service, all the branches of service, Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard, Homeland Security, all these different entities. And I learned that there's there between positional authority and relational authority. Because while I may have been a colonel and I wore a suit and tie every day, I still worked for the White House. There were people, junior staffers, that worked for the president's administration. They did not care what rank I was. They called me by my name, Vic. And being another level of humility, here it is. I got someone 15, 20 years younger than me saying the president wants that over there. The first lady needs that. Come over here, Vic, and help us out. And so, really learning how the art of effective communication, learn how to play well with others, collaboration, people in different cultures, meaning military culture, State Department culture, political culture, and learning how do we still relate to get the job done and have mission accomplishment. And then my final assignment, I was a battalion commander, overseeing over 400 people in 5 different states in the Mid-Atlantic. And I had individuals that wore every military uniform, Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard. And I also had DoD civilians I was responsible for. And so it was able to allow me to lead leadership at scale, a large level. And that was really pivotal, like that culminating point. And during that time, I completed my PhD in organizational leadership. And then I realized what I wanted to do when I grew up, which was to not only take the practical leadership experience I had from those 20 plus years at different levels in the military, but also the research piece that the PhD gave me into how and to and impart that on the next side. So I studied my research interests are in the dark side of leadership, which is we call narcissistic leadership, Machiavellian, psychopathy, and then also organizational cultures and climates. That becomes my leadership interest and my research interest. And then I worked in academia for some time, as well as consulting and contracting. And that became my leadership journey and how I made it to where I'm at now.
Man, that's a heck of a process and journey, not only from an academic standpoint, but from the military, from the political roles that you've experienced. So awesome, man. So definitely thank you for your service. You know, I too am a veteran. And I did do Operation Iraqi Freedom. Um, and I did Enduring Freedom, but I was in Iraq in '07, '08, and I was in Afghanistan in 13, 14 or something like that. So, we missed each other,
We
but
just missed each other.
yeah, yeah, man. So all good though. I'm glad you was able to gain all that insight and experience. And now you're giving it to people, not only from your lectures, from your consulting, but you don't put it in a book. Welcome to the Optic Club, my brother.
I
Um,
appreciate it.
So let's get into the book, man. First of all, I want to know how'd you come up with this drastic title, um, which is a dope title, but it's drastic. A lot of people don't, dive into, I guess, what they feel would be something so bold. It is eye catching, but what made you say I'm gonna go with this title?
That's great. Well, it's based off my doctoral research. And so I was in my last year of my doctoral program, and then my chair had asked, "Hey, Vic, okay, you've been doing great. It's about that time to start thinking about your dissertation. What are you thinking about?" And I said, "Well, I spent all this time in Iraq, and I'm really thinking about leadership under pressure or decisive leadership, and what makes all this military tactical stuff." And he said, "Okay, that's great. It's not unique, but it's great." I said, "Then there's this other thing I'm going through, I'm experiencing." He said, "Okay, what's going on?" I said, "I'm at work and I'm a senior officer and I'm on staff, and the other officers and other senior enlisted personnel, we are experts in our craft. We've been doing this for some time. We're by name selected for this particular position, but there's this feeling that's happening. I can't explain it, where someone may have some guidance they want to put out or recommend, and the boss will shoot it down. There's times where people are actually talking or they're emailing or they're trying to communicate with the seniors and they're not responding back. Like literally, emails will go unread." And I said, then the worst thing around our staff call, it feels like it's a scene from Lord of the Flies, where Piggy's getting picked on, where you are sitting here and you're watching senior members of the military get teased, humiliated, belittled. Someone could have a briefing slide and say, "Okay, where'd you get this from? Where does data come from? Who does this? I don't know how you made it this far." Stuff like that, whereas it's very demeaning and deflating. And so I was telling my chair, Dr. Wood, this, and I said, it's like this arrogant culture, and it's just suppressive, and I don't understand it. It's like organizationally arrogant. And he stops me right there and he says, "Did you say organizational arrogance?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "So it's something about that." He said, "Well, Vic, I've been studying leadership for over 15 years, and there's nothing in the body of knowledge that's called organizational arrogance." He said, "So if you don't write about it, I will." I said, "Nope, nope, that's mine. That's mine. I got it." He said, "So you are on the precipice of greatness as a doctoral student. You could create the word, then you create the definition, which we call a construct. You construct the word. Then you get to identify the definition. And because it doesn't exist, you can also create a scale so you can find out how to measure it." And I was like, "Wow, you mean to tell me I can create my own term?" He said, "That's what you just did, organizational arrogance. So now you get to define it and then develop the scale to measure it." And that was my doctoral research, and that's what I was able to do. And that's where organizational arrogance came from. And once I did the pilot and validated the instrument, about to nerd out real quick, at 0.922 Cronbach alpha, means highly validated, empirically validated instrument to measure the presence of organizational arrogance. That was my contribution to the body of knowledge.
Man, listen, so your book title for one thing, and then explaining how you got there. But you spoke earlier too when you mentioned narcissistic personality, because a lot of people get it confused. And I'm a therapist, so I hear these terms going around on social media all the time, but people don't know what they are. But as a leader, you have some narcissistic traits. So one can have narcissistic trait and not be a narcissist. So of course, you overly achieving, you got high self-worth, make yourself important, so many different things of privilege. It's different factors and different levels to it. But of course, a lot of people in leadership position possess those qualities, not necessarily right, wrong, or indifferent, but you have some of those traits. And what I'm hearing from you, and I'm hearing about your book, the arrogance piece, I don't know too many people who would literally call themselves or their style arrogant. So that's why it's pretty catchy, and I'm sure it's gonna do well based on the title alone. But when you dive into the content that you're talking about within it, you do. I don't want to give it away, man, but you do have this culture that you speak of, ODD. So if you can break down what ODD is and then let everybody else figure out the rest of the book by purchasing the book, that'll be dope.
Okay, no problem. So organization arrogance itself is defined as an organization environment where leaders shape or they behave with a sense of superiority, where now the organization members behave in that same way. Pretty much they start modeling it. And then the behavior that they emanate will come in one of three ways, and I call it ODD. Overconfidence in organizational capabilities, dismissiveness towards internal and external members, and then disparagement towards inter and external members. And so those are the three behaviors that are what we call odd behaviors, ODD behaviors, as a result of organizational arrogance. And so the premise of the theory, as I went through, and you shared about arrogance, yes, everyone can identify individual arrogance or leader arrogance. Okay, that person pretty arrogant. Oh, but where the gap in the research was that it only stopped. All research is shared about arrogance at the individual level. But but understanding organizational behavior theory, you look at three components. Starts at an individual, then goes to group, and then goes to organization. And so, based off my research, I was able to identify, wow, if something occurs at the leader level and it stays isolated, okay, that's just a leader being arrogant. But when it escalates and expands to a significant level, now it becomes organizational wide. The same way you can have organizational identity, you have leader identity, you have leader communication or individual communication, you have organizational communication. You have group behavior, you have organization behavior. And so it was just I was able to identify that the organizational level, this phenomenon had not been researched and has not been highlighted. And so that's where I found that gap. So we talked about the ODD, what that looks like. Historically, you could think about Kodak. 1975, Kodak was at the top of the world regards to imaging, and they're a photography company and prints. Well, in 1975, an engineer says, "Hey, listen, I think this thing called digital camera. He created this ideal for a digital camera." Now, because of the past successes of Kodak, you say, "Okay, listen, we're on top of the world. What do we need to worry about anything else? This is what we're good at, and we're going to stick to it." And they pretty much were overconfident in their abilities, and they missed that opportunity. So not only were they overconfident, said, "Listen, we don't need that." They also dismissed the insight of a subject matter expert on their team. So you have organizational arrogance and two behaviors that would emanate. Overconfidence, organizational capability. So listen, we're great. We're good just the way we are. And the dismissiveness towards internal or external matters. Here goes an expert on your team that you hired, an engineer, providing some value and insight on an opportunity that maybe we can exploit to continue distancing ourselves within this field. And they dismiss that. And what happens 40 years later, they go bankrupt. So they missed that opportunity. And so when we look at the ODD behaviors, when it starts happening, it's one thing to have one individual in the HR department acting up. It's another when HR, the IT, and then the finance department are all acting up. So now we went from individual level to group to now it's all at the top. Now we have this thing called organizational arrogance.
Man, that's a wild story about the Kodak situation. So I'm sure you probably heard some form of whether true or rumor or not, but the Netflix and Blockbuster thing was something similar. Hey, listen, from what I hear, Netflix went to Blockbuster like, hey, listen, streaming is the way. Let's join forces or whatever. Blockbuster like, nah, we cool, and no more Blockbuster.
Yeah.
But yeah, that dismissal can happen if you think you up here, which is unfortunate because yes, I believe, and I'm sure your research would suggest that you definitely can learn from everybody. And a lot of ways too is how parenting now has shifted too. A lot of people don't feel that they can learn from their
Mm.
children, which is unfortunate because the children are they got the social media on pack, they got the STEM, everything coming together. So I would definitely encourage parents to listen to those young people and not be dismissive because you might lose them. And if you don't got that ear, ain't no telling who do have that ear. So no, I appreciate that insight, man. So just overall though, Why do you think leadership is definitely one of those important qualities?
Well, when you look at, and again, I have a bias, right? I served in some of the most highest performing organizations ever placed on the earth, and had to do some of the hardest jobs ever that some people will never see. And you being a service member, only less than 1% American population has even worn a uniform. And so there's things I've been exposed to, and I watched high performing teams perform well. We've also seen what happens when leaders have a level of insecurity and what that can do to a culture, what that can do to a team. I watched leaders get relieved of command, watched senior enlisted advisors get relieved of overseeing troops. And so you see it. You see the power hungry and how power can go to your head. And you watched peers along the way does not know how to handle the weight of responsibility of the title. And so when you look at that and say, okay, wow, all things being equal, you have high performing organizations with bad cultures. You have high performing organizations with great cultures. Okay. But if you're spending 40 hours of your time out of the 168 hours a week, 40 hours of it spent coming to someone's building office, that's great if physically that's all you had. But the challenge when you're dealing with toxic work environments or unhealthy work environments, it's a psychological toll that it puts on that person. So instead of that 40 hours that they're spending physically in that building, how many more hours are they taking at home? That they're ruminating over these thoughts about that boss, that they have uh, chest flutters, or that sweaty palms because they don't know how they communicate. Then they get lit up or they get dismissed, or the phobia they have of speaking in front of their peers because they fear that because they may talk a little lower than the next person that they're seen as less confident, and now they're going to miss out on opportunities for promotion. And so now that is taken home with them. So that 40 hours physically, but now another 20 hours Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, and then the dread Sunday night before they go to bed to go back to work on Monday. We've seen the increase of workplace violence. We've seen the increase of, we call it a great resignation, people voting with their feet after COVID, say, it's okay. People are starting to identify, I don't need to spend majority of my time physically here and then mentally still there. How many families are impacted because someone's just, oh, they got to respond back to that phone call. They got to respond to the email. And so you ask about why is leadership so important? It's because we spend majority, the 20 to 30, 40 years someone spends at a job in their career before they retire. And so why not make that a point of emphasis? The leaders ensure that when you're underneath my charge for the 40 hours a week, that you can have the most pleasurable experience. Because I still have the other hundreds or so people in my organization that if people are not all, if their employee well-being is not prioritized, now I have also posed another threat in the workplace. And so again, we talk about the workplace violence issues. And so leadership has to take charge and recognize the value of creating a safe place. And so that's where I believe where leadership is very important when we talk about this book. And then overall, what as leaders are responsible for providing their workforce.
All right, man, appreciate that. So if it's a leader out there who ignored everything you just said, how can we assist them in becoming more effective leaders? Not only because it's a good quality to motivate the people who are your subordinates or your colleagues, but just for just overall gratification of a leadership position, like you're molding people, you're guiding people, you're influencing people. So how can we, or how can you educate them on how to be more effective leaders?
Well, first, you got to want to, right? We got to want to. And understanding the motivation. That's always as a leadership coach, that's the first thing I ask is, okay, you ask to have a coach, no problem. What is your goal? What do you want out of this experience that we're going to spend the 6 hours together the next year and a half? What is your goal? As a leader, if I'm brought in to speak with the leader as an executive coach, what is your goal? What do you want out of your organization? Because we have your circle of concern, circle of influence, and circle of control. I can teach, I can advise, I can guide, but that leader has to take accountability and they have to do. I can only control so much. And so being able to understand the motivation at the end of the day, are you okay with your employee the turnover rate of your organization has dropped 30% in the last 12 months and 70% over the last 6 years. You know how that's impacting productivity? You lost a lot of institutional knowledge because they're going across the street for somewhere they feel a lot more appreciated. And so really understanding first where are they at. So once you identify their motivation is, yes, I did not realize I had a culture like this. Great. Now at least we're having dialogue because to be honest, there's some people who just don't care, and that's okay. At least we understand that you're intentional. There's one thing if someone had no idea. It's another, someone says, oh no, I know I run a tight ship. And that's okay. And then those are the people that they will just walk past the book, walk past the consultants or anyone else who is trying to help them be even more effective as an organization. And so that's one of the first things is really looking at self-awareness. Do you know where you're at? Do you know how you're coming off? And it goes back to emotional intelligence. And I even speak about that in the book, how that is a key intervention strategy. Self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Self-awareness being, to me, I'll argue till I'm blue in the face. That's the most important trait we can have as humans is self-awareness. How do I feel and what's making me feel this way? Because if I understand that, my self-management, that's now let's just work on how I'm going to express how I feel. So I think that is the part where is the leader, and do they care enough about one internally to have a great organizational work environment so they can maximize the productivity of their employees, and then two, understanding how are they self-aware enough to understand how these behaviors may be detrimental to their ultimate bottom line. So those are some of the ways of really trying to find their motivation so we can identify the effective ways to get there. Because once they recognize that they want to, okay, let's have fun. We'll get there. We'll get there. And that's where the hard work comes in.
Yeah, that's dope, man. So self-awareness is definitely an awesome trait to have and be able to recognize where you need to pivot or increase here or take suggestions there or just delegate either way. So that is good for a leader. And you mentioned that emotional intelligence piece. Emotional intelligence will carry you far, not only in a leadership position at your employment, but in the community, in your own homes. There's so many different factors where emotional intelligence definitely got to play a part. Um, so if we had to shift though, you just gave a lot of great insight for effective leaders. What about those subordinates at the workplace? Like what strategies can leaders use if they want to change the environment of their organization because it has been poor leadership? What strategies would you suggest for the subordinates and or the organization?
If self-awareness is important, the next thing is active listening. Sometimes the leader just needs to be quiet because, as a psychologist, our body can tell us a lot of things. If we just listen to our body, what is going on? Same thing, you listen to your organizational body. A leader can watch, are people not speaking as much? Or how do they coordinate and how do they collaborate with one another? Is this a dog eat dog world? This crabs in a barrel? What am I witnessing? And this observing, it goes to social awareness, right? Another emotional intelligence trait. Are they observing how people work when they work? And then having opportunities to gain trust. Because depending upon where the leader is in their leadership journey, if they contributed to this environment or did they inherit it? They inherited it. Now they're in a great position. They have a chance to be the Superman, the hero, to turn around the culture. If they're the leader that's been in it and had no idea this was happening, now bring it forefront. And so really trying to gain trust because if the organization has been in the pits for some time. And now they finally get the illumination that, oh, wow, I did not realize this is where we're at. How do we have those uncomfortable conversations? And so one of the techniques that I'd always advise was you put like you have suggestion boxes around the organization, anonymous. and you say out there, hey, listen, I really want to understand what makes you come to work, what makes you want to leave work, where do you see yourself in this organization next 10 years? So all this very probing questions. Because again, your workforce would tell you people have the greatness of having surveys. That's great. The challenge is they don't respond to what people have shared in the survey. So you go from respondent rate of 80% in 5 years ago, now it's 20. Oh, people are not filling out the surveys. Yeah, because they realized the last 5 years you didn't do anything when you got the word, when you got the answers. And so again, the people will tell you, oh, they're not responding. You know why? Because they don't trust you. And so a leader being able to humble themselves and be vulnerable, say, listen, team, we realize we're not working in the best type of environment we can. And with your help, we're going to fix it. But I need to understand where we broken. Some of these issues I can fix quickly. Some things are going to take some time. But I really want you all to trust me. If they're a person that can gain that trustworthiness. And one of the ways to get those quick wins of trust is to address the concerns of the people and even follow up. And so that was something that had worked significantly for many of my clients, is where they would have the employees would drop it in there because now by them dropping it in there, one, they're saying, I'm going to trust you. You look in that box and there's nothing in there. They said, listen, we tired of these games. If there's a note in that box, that means that, okay, he's writing a check and I'm gonna see if it cashes. Wow. We want to understand why why issues are not communicated timely. Okay, that's a significant question. Now, leader has an opportunity to either have a town hall, have brown bags, intimate sessions, respond on email, whatever those organization communication strategies are, to say, I listened to you all, and this is the answer. Because employees don't necessarily need you to tell them what they want to hear. They need you to tell them what they need to hear. Hey, listen up. Guess what? We're having a downsize. I thought I could fight it. Hey, I got slayed too. So guess what? We're gonna have a hard time here, teammates. But trust me, I will make sure you all are in a better position. Anything I can do, whether recommendations or whatever. You and I serving in the military, we've had to make some hard decisions, whether we're in Afghanistan or Iraq. And we had to tell our soldiers, guess what? I did see the intel report. It is not looking good out there. We have a mission. I'm with you all. I'm just as scared as you. But trust me, we got each other's back and we're going to do this. They respect us more by telling the truth and being transparent than saying, hey, I don't know why we got to go over here. And so those kind of things, again, gets back to effective leaders and what techniques and tactics. Listen and then do something what you've heard because the workforce will definitely tell you.
Awesome insight, man. Before let you go, man, I definitely want people to get this book, but you and I both are part of the most amazing fraternity in the world, the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So, how has that shaped your leadership journey?
Wow. I get emotional thinking about that. I just celebrated 31 years in this great fraternity. I am a second generation Omega man, and then my son just recently became Omega man 2 years ago. And so when I think about Omega, I've been with Omega longer than I've more than half my life, longer than I was with the Army. And so having the opportunity to lead then before I even graduated college, being able to have that brotherhood, but also having leaders within the organization that were in the military, that were in the civilian sector, that served as mentors for me, all the way until the time I retired. I was able to work alongside an Omega man or reach out. When I talked about that time in the Pentagon, that was an Omega man that wanted to become a two-star general, Major General Price, a retired Price, who got square in my tail. But as a general officer that saw something in me, but he was an Omega man. And so being able to watch how Omega men can show up at some of the nation's most trying times and serve alongside them, I, I, there's nothing that's probably that not probably that was the greatest decision of my life to choose become to choose that way but also for them to select me. I'm just honored. And so they've been significant even with helping with this book launch. But so many stories I've told in the book are because of the brothers that have placed me in positions to succeed. And when I had some leadership failures and some challenges in my journey, I think every leader, if they're being transparent, they weren't a successful leader unless they had some failed opportunities to learn from. When I had bumped my heads over those 20 plus years in the military, men of Omega stood by me and they helped brush me off and put me in other positions and to help counsel me through that. So, what a great opportunity, again, to lead in the community outside and taking those same lessons learned and bringing it to every institution I've been a part of.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely appreciate that, man. Any last minute tips for the people?
Get the conversation started. We talk about workplace violence, we talk about bullying behaviors, but what are we doing? What are we doing? www.bookdrvic.com. Organization Arrogance is here. I have not created something new. I just added a name to it. And so now that we have a name to it, we can see what it looks like. We feel how we know how it feels. Be part of the conversation. Help me have the conversation started. And so the book is available now for pre-sales but on June 23rd, we'll have a virtual launch. And then stay tuned for many things we have coming. You can also check out my company, ltuiconsulting.com, where we have a host of solutions and resources that will help employees and leaders combat the challenge of organizational arrogance.
Vic, good to have you, brother. Definitely appreciate your insight, your guidance, and your leadership for coming through and blessing the people. So I'm sure it will leave a mark. People will definitely use this as a tool, whether it's in their infrastructure and or if they want to practice and implement these things. So definitely appreciate you, brother. Keep up the good work. I'm looking forward to my signed copy, and I'll catch you on the next one, man.
No doubt, no doubt. Take care. Appreciate you.